there's only two ways to learn, right? There's only mentorship or mistakes. So I'm teaching people through my mistakes that I made throughout my career in terms of, hey, when I didn't listen to somebody, I fell on my face and I had to figure it out on my own. And now who can I help to avoid, falling on their face by teaching you how to, apply it in the sense. And that's why I love, again, the MBA thing you talked about, because it's really adversity and experience that became the teacher.
Uncompromised, 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 we uncompromised, uncompromised, we uncompromised, and I got it. Look, what does it take for you to be great? Keep it 100, bro, you know the answer. Pursuing your purpose, creating profits, building legacy. Anything less, how could you even fathom? Just sit back and imagine all that can truly happen when you pursue your passions. Yeah. So eliminate distractions and get back to that action. That's the law of attraction. You gotta build a team to build a dream. Family, faith, and focus. Counsel can only build a king. Are you prepared to reign? Cause whether you weather the weather won't change. Whether you weather the weather, your weather won't change. Stay true to the vision. Stay true to the mission. Gotta get to the finish. Take a moment to listen and come and see it through our eyes. We'll show you what it means to live uncompromised. We're uncompromised, 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 uncompromised. We're uncompromising. Yeah, uncompromised. We're uncompromised. We're uncompromising. Yeah, uncompromised. Uncompromised. You're uncompromising.
Welcome back, Uncompromising Entrepreneurs. This is episode 61. And we are super excited about our third installment of our MBA series, Mentored by Adversity, within season 3 of the Uncompromising Entrepreneur podcast. And we're excited because we have Alan C. Paul with us in this episode. And Alan is a driven and dedicated content professional whose entrepreneurial spirit has taken him down really a few different paths. He's an author, a blogger, a public speaker who shares his insights through multiple media channels. And specifically how we kind of connected was through his podcast, which is God and Gigs. And again, we're very excited to have him with us today as we go through our normal questions and just have really what we hope is going to be an insightful conversation coming off of the heels of the last few podcasts that we've been doing, specifically talking about solopreneur success, but also the gig economy and how as a solopreneur, you can really maybe take some of these side hustles that you've been working on and turn them into a true solopreneur business. So again, we are very blessed and excited to have you with us today, Alan. Brother, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing, and thank you guys for having me on the show. I got to tell you, like, as soon as you started talking about solopreneurship and your I believe it's the MBA thing, I got a little nervous when I saw MBA because I was like, man, I don't know if these guys really read my bio right because I ain't even close to a master's of anything. But I love the program. I love what you guys are doing. I'm looking forward to sharing with your audience and with, like you said, just chopping it up and talking about how it can be more successful in this life that we've chosen.
Absolutely, man. Well, actually, the initials are definitely intentional when we started this thing, because we know for a lot of folks entering entrepreneurship, entering that business space, a solopreneur success space, you kind of think, man, do I have the chops of what it takes in order to be a successful entrepreneur? Do I have the business acumen? Did I study? Man, maybe I didn't even do that well in accounting and marketing and economics. And so, man, does that mean I can be a successful entrepreneur? And what we have found, and obviously we know that this will be highlighted a little bit through your story, based off of what we read through your bio, is that the most successful entrepreneurs, the most successful solopreneurs, they are taught by their adversity, being able to overcome the challenges that are in front of them, learning, innovating, pivoting, and kind of taking those life lessons along with their faith, and pouring that into their calling, ultimately to be successful. So for us, that's the highest level of education from our perspective that you can achieve as an entrepreneur, that MBA of being mentored by adversity and getting on the other side of that. So, man, you are more than qualified based off of what we've been talking about, man. And we can't wait to share that with our Uncompromising Entrepreneurship community.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it again. And like I said, this is, I feel like I'm at home anytime I'm talking about this stuff because it's life. It's like you just get around the right people. You connect with people like you guys. Like you said, I was looking through your shows and all the great guests you have, and more importantly, the real talk you're sharing. So like I said, let's just jump into it, and hopefully I can share something that will help somebody out there who's also on the same journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely would love to hear about your podcast, God and Gigs as well. But why don't you, let's start off by having you tell us a little bit about you personally and professionally.
Well, everybody, says, okay, how can I put my entire life into a couple of sentences, right? So I pick 4 words, maybe 5. I go back and forth. Personally, I'm a husband, father, I'm a creative, and I always finish up with forgiven. I'm forgiven. I'm redeemed. I don't look like what I've been through. All those cliches are true. They're facts. Been married to my wife coming up on 25 years in December.
Wow, okay. Very
Leah
nice.
and I, yeah, man, I don't know why she put up with me, but she did. And 3 beautiful children, all adults, got started early, so I finished early. And there's more to that. That's part of the testimony part. And as professionally, as you mentioned in my bio, I am an author, writer of the book God and Gigs, Succeed as a Musician Without Sacrificing Your Faith. My blog, my platform, everything I do is really around that musician creative side of trying to help people like me who, I've been playing piano since the age of 4. I've been in churches. I've been a music teacher. I've been all over the place. And now it just kind of fell into this pot where, okay, how do I help other creators like myself? Well, I got to talk about the stuff that we talk about behind the scenes, backstage, things that we deal with as, musicians. As I mentioned, I've been playing, in all kinds of gigs and things like that for 20, 25, maybe 30 years. So that's kind of like where the professional thing comes in, where it was just teaching and it was ministry and it was music. Now it's all of the above. And God and Gigs kind of works to help people connect those dots between the spiritual and the practical when it comes to this business.
Very nice. Yeah, definitely. We have some things in common, not at 25, but my wife and I just hit 23 years of marriage. Right. We also have 3 kids, 2 young adults. Our youngest is 14, about to be 15 in November. So we're getting close to, in the next few years or so being empty nesters. And like you said, we started early as well. So we're excited about that. Obviously, it's challenging. It's a little scary, but, you put all your faith in God, right? And you do your best to raise them and put your faith and trust that they're going to follow and they're going to do their best that they can to honor their parents, to honor God, and, just be good folks overall in the community. So
that's so true. And I got to tell you mentioned the empty nest thing, man. I wish I was close to the empty nest. These guys aren't even close. I have one that flew the coop, but the other 2 are like really comfortable, man. So
I hear you.
We'll have to talk about that a little later. But maybe you can give me some pointers on how to make sure. Well, eventually.
Yeah, one left. My oldest is my son, and he left a couple of years ago. Our second oldest, she just turned 21, so she's still here too. She's going through her master's program online at Florida State, and staying home, save money. So with the girls, I'm okay with them being home, right? So yeah. I'm definitely not trying to kick anybody out, but we'll see how it goes over the next few years. But so that really leads me to my next question, having some of those things in common. Like, how do you balance your personal life and obviously being a husband and a father and an entrepreneur, a musician, a creative? How do you balance your personal and professional demands?
Great question, Jimmy. And one of the things that I think we are learning very quickly in this COVID pandemic season is that this idea of balance, as if we can kind of predict what's coming and keep that. Like, it's like being on a surfboard, right? You see these guys like riding the wave and you say, oh, they got perfect balance. They know exactly. And you don't see the millions of times they fell off. You don't see how long they were just sitting out there paddling. And this illusion that we can ride this wave perfectly between personal and professional, I don't think, at least in my life, is truly not the actual case. It's going from one wave to the next. Okay, I got to get on this wave and ride it, and it might be my family wave, and that's, where I kind of tell people the story in my book, where the first, 5, 6, 7 years of my professional life, it was all family, and I kind of eschewed the road. I didn't want to do anything except come home, raise my kids, eat dinner, and have that more sedate kind of creative life where I was more into teaching and church, and that was it. So family was really the focus at the beginning of my career, and now that my kids are older, I'm kind of moving it more to the career. So in the daily sense, I think me being an ADD creative, as many of us, creators are, it's been learning how to put first things first. It's like, okay, I got to have that to-do list. I'm usually a free spirit, but I need the organization because my wife has needs, my children have needs, and my business has needs. And they got to go on the list, and I got to get it out of my head so it's not spinning around, put it on the list. And then, okay, what's first things first? If it's right now, I got to focus on one-on-one time with my wife. All those other things have to go down to the bottom. It's not balanced. At that point, everything falls to the bottom and the wife goes to the top. But as you can see right now, my focus needs to be on my audience and you guys and the people that are listening. So now my wife knows, that recording sign is on. Hey, don't bother. Yeah. So now the balance goes all the way, the seesaw goes to the other side, but that's okay. So I don't think there's any one perfect side where you can stay in the middle. I think that's where some of the gurus, they kind of led us wrong. You have to realize that it's not about, priority means only one thing. It can't be multiple priorities. That's not really, that's an oxymoron. Priority actually means the first is the first. And so I just got to choose which priority I'm focusing on, not necessarily have multiple ones at the same time.
I love the analogy that you actually just provided around, the surfer riding the wave. I think it's applicable twofold, right? Sometimes this is the wave that we're on, whether it is, in our creative bag or our business focused bag or our fatherhood bag. And I'm riding that wave. This is the only thing I can commit myself to. If I'm on this wave, it's impossible for me to get to the other wave in the middle, right, riding this one. I got to wait till this one dies down and hop on the next one. But also, even in that process of, surfing, like you said, sometimes we look at these surfers and we think they have just perfect balance. And in reality, it is throughout that entire process of riding the wave, they are constantly shifting and adjusting their weight and making those minor changes, because even within that riding that wave, there are subtle changes that may occur, and your focus is I can't fall off the board, and I have to continue to ride this all the way out. And so even when you're focused on, maybe again your wife or maybe your business, and you're all in on that priority, there are still things that may come up that you're constantly shifting and adjusting to deliver on that priority to see it all the way through. So I think it's a powerful example, man. And I would also what I'm really excited to hear about, especially in your journey. We've been talking a lot about solopreneurship and creatives, and I think we've come into kind of a new world from a creative perspective, because I think a lot of folks, they think, oh, if I'm a musician or I'm an artist or something like that, like the options that are available to me are very, very limited. It's either, like you said, either I'm teaching it or maybe I'm pursuing a career professionally as a musician. I'm waiting for my multi-platinum hit record album. You know what I mean? Yep. And I think what you've been able to do is you've been able to really find out like where your purpose and your passion intersect, and you've lived in there, and you've combined these years of experience of teaching or playing professionally to carve out a very unique niche for yourself that folks may not have even thought about, but as a creative, it makes complete sense, right? The things that you're highlighting, the way that you're talking about your experiences and using that to teach, but also teach about the experience of, being a musician or being a creative in this gig type of economy. I think, man, it's going to be super, super enlightening. I think it's going to be a lot of value for our listeners who may find themselves in the same space of, man, all right, I knew how to play an instrument. I thought I was going to be, Beyonce Jr. And that's not going to work out. So I can't do anything with this talent. That's the furthest thing from the truth. You've been able to show otherwise.
Well, thank you. And number one, I appreciate those kind words about, I believe, I'm stealing this quote from somebody. I know it was in a podcast, or maybe in Clubhouse or somewhere I heard it. But there's only two ways to learn, right? There's only mentorship or mistakes. So I'm teaching people, I'm teaching people through my mistakes that I made throughout my career in terms of, hey, when I didn't listen to somebody, I fell on my face and I had to figure it out on my own. And now who can I help to avoid falling on their face by saying, hey, for the first 10 years of my life, I didn't know what a contract was. I just said, hey, you want me to play? I'll show up. And I didn't look at intentionally setting myself up so that, I worked hard to learn, to play and get a degree and, whatever the professional thing is, you work hard to use that. But then no one really teaches you how to, apply it in the sense. And that's why I love, again, the MBA thing you talked about, because it's really adversity and experience that became the teacher. And so now I feel like what you're really getting at for a lot of us, those who are listening, who are like, okay, well, I had a talent, like you said, the Beyonce Juniors. Like, there's never been a better time to be a gig economy entrepreneur, solopreneur, because there is a limitless market where you can get your 1,000 true fans. I'm sure you guys have heard that concept. Get your 1,000 true fans and just serve them, find your passion and your purpose and solve a problem. That's it. Passion, purpose, that will solve a problem that people will pay you for. That's literally and it sounds simple. Of course, it's not simple, right? It's simple. It's not easy. I should say it like that.
Correct.
Right. So I feel like, again, like I'm not out here in terms of success trying to tell people how, to do something I haven't done, because I haven't made $1 billion. I'm not a Bill Gates. I'm here to tell you how successfully I was able to use these mistakes, still keep my family, still keep my sanity, still keep my health, still keep my faith. And that's worth, to me, gold. That's if I could it's everything. So
legacy.
I feel like the other stuff will work itself out, but yeah, I'm trying to focus on those key elements of life that really make everything else worth it, and then you can pursue the dreams and everything. Yeah, it's amazing to see what God can do when you pursue the vision and the goals and the big success. But that internal success, that's why I really push that whole building better lives from the inside out in my podcast. Like, if it's not inside, the outside things, we've all seen it fall apart. Yeah.
Oh, well said, man. Well said.
Mm-hmm. So when we think about your journey as an entrepreneur, what was that moment in your life, or that time in your life where you knew or felt that entrepreneurship was part of your calling and where God was leading you?
Well, okay, this is a bunch of stories I have to wrap up into one, because, as you know, usually God will either give you whispers or hit you with a 2x4. So he did a little bit of both with me.
Okay.
Starting out, I think the first whisper of that I need to be my own boss and work to build something of my own was my dad. My dad, still alive, thank God, dental practice as a dentist, and has a dental practice up in Northwest Florida. And watching him build, he had that code doctor thing where they shared an office for a while when I was little. And then I remember when he opened his own practice, and I remember sitting in that dental chair, and I remember how proud he was to have his name on that marquee. And I know at 8, 9 years old, it was just something about knowing that my dad, now he was working like a dog, coming home late, but that was his. And I know that was the first seed of entrepreneurship, of being my own boss. The second one was when I was teaching public school. As I said, coming out of school, didn't want anything to do with gigging or, touring. So just taught elementary school, loved it, still love teaching. I just lowered my class size. That's all I did when I left the school system. So the second part was, though, seeing that pay scale on that teaching pay scale, and realizing there's about 9 people voting every year on how much that scale is going to be with the union, and realizing I'm never going to go any further than these 9 or 10 people voting are going to say. And just watching one of those school board meetings, man, I was like, these guys are not in my classroom. They know nothing about what I'm dealing with, and yet my ceiling is tapped by their decisions. And that just bothered me. Now, again, a lot of other things between my children, realizing I wanted to step out. I actually became a homeschool dad. And after I left the school system, was ministry. So like I said, as you said in my bio, a million of different directions, but all of them involve me having control of my own destiny, God leading me to be, hey, don't rely on anybody else. Like, this is on you. You know, he said, you know, little verse real quick that popped into my head. He talked to Moses, he said, what's in your hand? You know, Moses like, oh, I can't speak, I can't do, I can't this, I can't do that. He's like, what's in your hand? And whatever was in his hand, what he used to get the job done. So he kind of said the same thing to me. He's like, hey, like you said, I can play, I can teach, I can speak, I am passionate about these things. What's in your hand? So now it's got to become the thing that gets me to build something that can feed me and that can sustain me later on in life, instead of waiting for somebody else to build it for me.
Powerful, man. I love it. I love it. So once you kind of came to that conclusion, you were like, all right, I know, I hear you, Lord. Yeah, I heard the whispers and I felt the 2x4. Now, how did you then transition to finding kind of your tribe? Like you mentioned, those 1,000 true fans. So like, talk to us a little bit about what that process was like. How did you find those 1,000 true fans that you knew, this is my purpose, and now I got to solve problems for them specifically?
Well, this is great because we literally just had, I think, as my wife and I did our podcast, and trust me, my wife never shows up on the podcast. So just getting her, she showed up on the first anniversary, and we just did our fifth anniversary of my book, fourth anniversary of the podcast. That was last month.
Nice. Congratulations.
So, thank you. So, but here's why, you know, I got to use her as because I forget how this all started, because we were going back and forth about, okay, what did we do? Like, how did we get people? Like, and she reminded me, guys, she's like, every time we opened our doors, musicians were showing up at our house. She was feeding them, giving them, you know, it'd be after church or it'd be after a gig or whatever. And we're just coming to hang out. We're not hanging out at the bar. We're not hanging out at the club. We're not even hanging out at the parking lot of the church necessarily. We're hanging out at the house. And we're doing little jam sessions or whatever. But my house has always ended up being a sanctuary for these musicians and creatives. And she said that quote, again, I got to use it for her because I wish I thought of it. She said it. She's like, I was feeding them physically. You were feeding them spiritually. And I was like, whoa. So what I'm basically saying is the audience and the community came to us because we were just doing it. Like, we were just living. So the more and more I realized, it wasn't necessarily me going out to, like, you know, do the call to actions and try to find the people and, you know, do the Facebook thing. I mean, Facebook, when I was starting, there wasn't even really a social media presence to do. You know, that wasn't a big thing back in 2010, 11, 12. So, I mean, that's what really happened for us, is that the community was already there, and we just said, hey, what do you guys need? So we started doing live events, and we started doing just hangouts that we used to do at the house. We'd rent a place. And again, we just keep asking, what do you guys need? What do you want? What's bothering you? So the community was formed by us constantly asking questions and serving, versus us looking for them and saying, hey, I got this thing, come get it.
Come get it.
Yeah, it was always like, hey, you guys are already here. What can I do to help? And that's really where the community formed. And yeah, 5-6 years later, it's amazing. It's just some of the same people are still, we've watched them grow up in a sense, right? We've watched the community grow, and they went on and did their amazing things, but they always remember how we started. It was always about just connecting at that deep level.
Yeah, man, I think that's powerful because, you know, one of the things that we talk about, not just on our podcast, but even in our coaching program, From Purpose to Profits, and we talk about identifying your tribe, and what you're touching on is, you know, something we firmly believe in, which is, you know, it's all about building a community is all about engaging in a conversation. Yeah. Like, you were asking them, hey, what do you need? Well, what do you need? It's not looking at social media marketing or reaching out to these folks as a commercial. Like, I'm going to run an advertisement for my book and my podcast and what we offer. It's about engaging in authentic conversations. And by doing that, you end up nurturing that tribe and building that tribe, and they start bringing other individuals because they want to be around that. And I think another thing you touched on a little bit earlier, which was like, it's not like you're talking about something that you're not living, right? You're not sitting here and talking to them about, hey, how do you become a billionaire in 7 days through the gig economy? Because that's not your reality, nor is it your purpose or what you're trying to serve. What you are doing is you're a living testimony to what does it mean to, again, like you called out the title of your book, right? Maintain your faith, right? Maintain your relationship with God while you still go and navigate these waters of the gig economy. And what does that potentially look like for me? And I think people seeing your story, being around you, being able to connect and have those authentic conversations, it's something that makes you want to be a part of whatever this is, right? I'm on the ride for whatever it could potentially become. And so what started off as chilling out at the house and, your wife feeding them physically while you fed them spiritually has evolved into you becoming an author, podcast, like website, consult, like all of these things. So it's really dope to just kind of see how that has evolved, just because you focus on, like you said, just having an authentic conversation with your folks.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because the phrase that, again, we think of conversion. Sometimes we use, even Apple has a chief evangelist, right? With like that word just means be, spread the good news. And so I've been really thinking about the fact that there's never a conversion without a conversation. Like that is the key to a conversion, is there has to be a conversation first. Like it's the same root word, right? And so I've been really focusing. This is one of these things that, again, I probably borrowed from somebody else, another coach who didn't realize it. But I've been focusing lately, and I just realized it's almost like a mantra to me. Every day, it's like, okay, I got to share. Share the good news, share what I'm doing. And then I got to make someone smile, right? I got to give them some joy, give them something. And then I got to solve a problem. So if I just do those 3 S's every day, man, if I just share, I make someone smile, and I solve a problem, man, that's what we're all looking for, man. We're all looking to like feel some smiles with all the bad news that's going on. And, we want to hear some good news. We want to share something that's actually like great. And then, dude, I got something that's bugging me. I need help with this. I need the mechanic. I need this. I need whatever the issue is, right? There's always a problem to be solved. So that's really been my focus lately, the last 2 or 3 weeks. And it's amazing because it makes everything else simple, business or life. Same thing with my family. I got to share with my family. I got to make them smile, or else they're not going to be happy with me. And my family needs me to solve problems. So it really, the business and the life thing balance becomes more like, hey, let me just be authentically, like you said, creating conversations and creating opportunities to connect with the people that I really care about.
Yeah, I love that on the last episode, that was one of the tips that we provided to our audience for people who are looking to grow their solopreneur business quickly, is to share your knowledge. Yeah. And knowing that as a solopreneur, as an entrepreneur, you're either trying to solve a problem or you're trying to, escapism, right, is big in society today. So you're trying to provide some type of entertainment or help people feel good and better. But smiling does that, right? If I'm helping you to smile because I'm entertaining you in some type of way, again, I'm feeding into that pleasure or the pain and helping you to relieve that pain by helping you solve the problem that you have right now. So I really, really love how you put that together. Makes obviously just complete sense. And it's KISS it, right? Keep it simple and systematic. And that's definitely simple.
I like that last S. Yeah, I like that last S. Yeah, we don't want to insult people.
Yeah, exactly. That one I know I picked up from actually Kurt, the Connector. He was the first guest that we had on our MBA series
Nice.
For our 3rd season. And yeah, picked that one up from him. As soon as I heard, I had to write that down. I said, yeah, Kurt, I'm definitely going to be using that from now on. So you mentioned your dad and kind of the inspiration that you got from him at that early stage and seeing him start his own business. So we're curious, who are the people that helped you to grow as an entrepreneur, and what are some things that they taught you as mentorship or from examples and maybe mistakes that they've made in their past?
Well, it's really interesting that in this day and age, again, I kind of alluded to the whole mentorship thing, but I think a lot of people I'm sure you guys know as coaches that this is a buzzword now. Like everybody wants a mentor, and I can't say I had a specific mentor in business that taught me, okay, this is how you run things. I would go to things like SCORE, and try to get those, executives and people to talk to me. But I think a lot of it was more the virtual mentorship, the books and the trainings and stuff like that. So all of the stuff from, you name all the big names that we know in online marketing. I just devoured everything they had, bought all the courses, and just really just made myself a student and had to dig myself into this marketing and business world. Because as you know, as musicians, generally that's not talked about. We get these big books of law, right? The business of music. And that was like, that's right over there in my bookcase. It's about 700 pages. Unless you're going to be a lawyer, you don't understand anything in that. So as a musician and as a creative, I felt like I had to go out, kind of outside of that world, because a lot of the people inside the world were relying on other people to kind of run their careers, to run, managers and, again, entertainment lawyers. And they were just like, well, I just go out there and I play and I perform. I said, well, you're not taking advantage of the information that's in front of you. That's really what I do now, is I try to tell creators and musicians, hey, you can learn how to run your books. You can learn how to, do a Facebook ad, because I had to learn it. I didn't necessarily have somebody walking me through step by step. Now, that being said, I absolutely relied on my core community, like I mentioned, to really give me like that encouragement to keep going. So they may not been teaching me, hey, here's how you run your business, but they were definitely telling me, hey, here's how you stay steady and stay focused and stay persistent with it. So, a lot of, I could name a million of the musicians in my circle. You wouldn't know their names, but these are guys like that have played for Donnie McClurkin and
wow.
and yeah, these are South Florida. We got amazing musicians, and they've gone on to do amazing things. But I didn't know what they were doing in business. Like now I know. Back then, I wish I had asked them those questions, right? But back then it was like, oh, you're just doing amazing things. Now I realize, yeah, you guys were going to take the same seminars I was taking. You were learning how to do email marketing. You were paying attention to how you do this, but that's not, unfortunately, always shared in our community. So I have to say, I didn't until later realize the power of having those mentors to actually walk you through. Now I have guys that have, done joint webinars with me, and they're saying, hey, Alan, why aren't you doing this with your lives? Why aren't you doing this? Now we're coaching and helping each other. But that wasn't the case at the beginning. I really had to almost, do that whole pull yourself up by your own bootstraps until I realized there were other people who were just like me who could help me.
Yeah, what I love about that is, having some experience myself as a musician and kind of in the gig space, mostly as a writer though. You're right. Like, you get that big book of music law and you flip through the first couple of pages and you're like, all right, I'm cross-eyed. Sure, whatever. I need to hire representation. I need somebody else to handle this because of what it takes just for me to create. The process of me creating, it requires so much energy that I don't want to expend that same energy trying to figure out marketing and business and how can I balance all of that. But then what inevitably happens, because we hear it, we've seen it, we've heard it from other people or experienced ourselves, is the examples of all these really brilliantly talented individuals getting taken advantage of in this space time and time again. And you're listening, you find out somebody gets an amazing placement, and then you find out that they don't have any credit to show for, they didn't get compensated for. You're like, how did you not end up on that, right? And it's because of that lack of knowledge. And so I love what you're sharing about, the realization you had of, I kind of got to go outside of this traditional path that I've seen other folks take of looking at the entertainment law book and then casting it to the side and saying, okay, well, where else can I consume some of this information where it's digestible, where I can understand it, where I can start using it to my advantage, so I'm not relying on second and third parties that I hope have my best interests at heart, or I hope that my radar was on point and I found the right person. Now I can confidently know it. Even if I do have partnerships or I am leveraging relationships, I'm not ignorant to what's going on in the space. I can speak from a place of confidence and experience. And it comes back to like one of the things that we were sharing with the audience in our last episode around being committed to learning something, like learning, continuing to learn as a solopreneur and staying on top of what's happening in your space that's relevant, but then also sharing. And you brought that back up with, all of these folks that are well accomplished musicians, but they're not just accomplished musicians. You come to find out that they're also accomplished business people because of how they've gone about protecting themselves and investing in themselves and learning, and then the power of being able to share that. Because, man, I've occupied rooms, I know you have as well, with people who are brilliant. They have a natural ear. They have these different skill sets, and they can spend hours teaching you what type of filter or effect that they stumbled across and how they flipped it, put this verb on it and did this, and right. And they show you that trick. But then when you want to engage in a conversation around, well, show me the tricks of your business, is like, it's a little bit more guarded, right? Or they can't speak to it. And I think that has shifted completely, where you now see the power starting to shift more to the creatives in terms of accessibility to this information. And then even those that have access to it now saying, okay, I have to be an evangelist for this part of the job. It's not just, can you write a catchy hook or play, cool notes, but hey, man, now I'm having conversations with my friends. What's your business like? Tell me, like, how do your contracts look? What do you typically do? What's your expectation? How do you handle the conversation around booking? Do you take money up front? What's your back end process look like? Like all of those things that we were not having conversations about before. And so I love to hear kind of your evolution and how you figure that out along the way. And hopefully our listeners, if you're a creative and kind of in this space, it's resonating with you, the importance of doing that diligence, so that, like you said, you learn from mentorship, the virtual mentorship of listening to this and listening to Alan's experiences, as opposed to the mistakes of, we've had to feel of, losing out on money and losing out on opportunity and stuff like that, because we just didn't take the time to shore up that part of our process.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, even as you talked about it, I realized, this is, again, it's really been the last 10, 15 years. I don't even know, the Spotify generation, whatever you want to call it, back, I guess Napster was back when it started, all stealing music or whatever and all this stuff. It's like the record industry did not see this coming, right? They were surprised. And I don't think the musicians and the creatives saw it coming either, but the digital revolution, again, put all this at our fingertips, where now that's right. Yeah, maybe streaming only gets you like 0.001 cent. But at least you have control now over how many people you reach, or you have control over your email list, or you have control. You're not waiting, like you said, for the record company to come give you this huge advance. That's a loan.
Yep.
That was one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite lessons back in elementary school, guys. It's so funny. I remember I actually had to teach my elementary school students. They're like, "You see your big stars over there? You do realize that all the things they're driving. This is like early 2000s." You do realize they have to pay all that back, right? You do realize those videos are usually loaned money. That right, they're loaned and they're rented and they're leased, and it's like you guys are following them. And I was teaching elementary school kids. I just wanted them to be better music consumers. Now flip that to us creatives realizing, oh, that was all smoke and mirrors as well. And like you said, look at all the horrible stories, the James Browns and the Princes, our best entertainers, guys that were the best of the best, and yet they still had no plan for the assets and the creative genius that they built, and their families or their estates have nothing to show for it after all that creative genius. That's a big thing that I think, again, thinking about legacy and family, that's something I don't want to happen to any family, especially my own. So yeah, it's like, okay, maybe it's hard, maybe I don't like to talk about law and contracts and copyright, but my children are going to be glad that I did. So yeah, that's something that's super near and dear to my heart now. And
what I love too about what you're sharing is that not only has this quote unquote like Spotify generation, at least they're better informed about, okay, well, where do I put my music? And what am I getting in terms of like my splits and my royalties and the whole nine? But now they're taking a step further, and they're empowered to make the decision to say, well, do I really value my music, my contribution, my creativity at pennies on the dollar? Because maybe now for me, I don't want to go down the path of, being on a streaming platform. Are there other ways? Is it better for me to find my 1,000 true fans and sell direct to consumer at the price point or the valuation that I feel it's worth? And yeah, I may not get 1 million spins, but I don't need 1 million spins because I just need 1,000 loyal listeners at the price point that I know it's worth. And I'm making more than if I was, on all the Spotify charts right now because of how the splits and the breakouts work. And so they're using that information now to their disposal as well, which is powerful.
Exactly. It's all about ownership. It's all about ownership. I look at performers like Jimmy Buffett's, and come on now, Margaritaville is literally a brand name everywhere. He's got resorts and things from one song became a brand. And of course, we got all the other examples of the Jay-Z's and people who have created empires because of their business acumen. But yeah, I just think we have to value creators. We have to value, that intellectual property we have is irreplaceable. You can't. Yeah, and we all, those of us who create, have it. And it doesn't matter if it's music, art, film, whatever. I mean, during COVID, if it weren't for the creative economy, all of us would have gone crazy.
Yeah.
So it was really us keeping the mental state of the world in check and having something when we were all locked down. We were watching Netflix, we were listening to music and art and film into our homes digitally. And of course, now you got NFTs and everything. So yeah, the sky's the limit, I think, if we contain and keep that ownership. That's, I think, the key word that we got to remember.
Powerful, man. Yeah, this stuff is right up my alley.
Yeah, I mean that was big for us. I was thinking it, and then you said it, that IP, that intellectual property, and that was, part of why we started what was the Legacy and Leadership podcast, and now the Uncompromising Entrepreneur podcast. Was, hey, there's a pandemic going on. We've been having these conversations. Like, we want to be able to bring this to the world, and if nothing else, leave a legacy for our kids and, God willing, grandchildren that will be able to have this record of, their grandfather, great grandfather, and some conversations and what they taught and how they tried to make an impact in the world. But also recognizing, as we started to say, okay, we think that we can actually turn this into a business. So our IP is very valuable to us, and what we know and how we help and how we serve other people. You just have to be very cautious of how you do that, and making sure, again, that you're serving people, because that's the heart, right? That's the passion of what you're doing. At the same time, when you have a family that you're trying to provide for, that you're getting your worth and the value for that intellectual property that you truly have. And when you're talking about contracts and such, making sure that you're doing it in a way that other people are not able to take advantage of that, right? And like you said, leaving that legacy for your family, not for somebody else's family, but for your family.
Yeah, man. You almost have an obligation, not even almost. When we talk about legacy, you have an obligation to do so for them. Because, again, the things that we're creating, we may not even really reap the full benefit of what we're offering to this world, right? But our children, our children's children, those who follow us. And so we have an obligation to be good stewards and put them in a position where they can leverage that and unlock the potential of what that has to offer, whatever our offering is. I think about recently watched on Netflix a Bob Ross documentary, which was fantastic. And then just the situation, his son's a brilliant painter out of Orlando, and he doesn't even have the rights to his father's own name. Like, how
to his name,
to his last name. I don't even own my name anymore, and how just gut wrenching that is to see. And all these, like you said, all these other examples, Prince's estate, and then you see kind of these creatives come to that realization almost too late. Obviously Bob was on his deathbed and he's trying to figure out and scramble, hey, get the paperwork, I need you to go see this person and sign it. But by that time, the other folks had already been kind of plotting and scheming and preparing. And, at the end of the day, it played out the way that it played out. And so I think about those things, whether it's when we create podcast content, or, we're writing music, or we're creating some, art, or whatever it is that we're offering, the business that we're building, and just making sure that, like, this is not mine per se. This is something that I've started the process of building. I have a hand in, but this is much bigger than me. He's planted that in my heart. It's much bigger than me. And so I have an obligation to be a good steward while I'm responsible for it, because some boys coming up behind me they need to be in a position to take the ball and run with it. And the last thing I want them to do is, look at me and like, dang, Pops, you couldn't even give me the opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, you built so much, but you didn't protect it. Now what?
That's powerful. Yep.
So when I think about some of those stories, right, and the examples that we just provided and the adversity that those individuals or that their family went through, I'm curious, Alan, if you can tell us about adversity that you faced and what did you learn from that moment as an entrepreneur specifically, and what did you learn from that moment and kind of take away as you worked through that adversity in your entrepreneurship journey?
Well, even when you mentioned this question earlier, it goes so many different directions, right? Because adversity, obviously, I think of that verse that says a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for adversity. So the first thing that comes to me is that, okay, if I went through something, the only reason I got through it is because somebody else was there with me. And so it takes my mind, that word, not necessarily right away to entrepreneurship, but just life. Like the people, I could not have a business if I didn't first have a brother. I couldn't first have somebody that would keep me sane and make sure that whenever my family was getting all messed up and I was getting, out of my head, I couldn't. Now, here's the thing. I tried to pretend like I could focus on my business when my family was suffering, but I was not. And matter of fact, now that I even talked to you guys, this is the first time I've realized if I can think of the dips where I really didn't make any progress in my business, it was because my family and my mental state and my emotional state was not together. So it was impossible for me to move forward in my business because my life was not reflecting that value and that ownership that we're talking about. If I can't own my problems, I can't own my prosperity. I can't, I can't handle that. So I really, again, I don't know if it answers the question, but there's plenty of dips in the business side where I could say, yeah, I went through this and, the money went down to zero and we had to figure this out and think. But my mind goes back to those times when I needed to get myself together so that I could be a better business person, so that I would realize the value, kind of like what we're talking about. If I didn't value my own ability, I wouldn't value those things that I was creating with this, podcast and things like that. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is that thank God I had people who kind of called me on the carpet, right? People were like, Alan, what are you doing? Those people who really kind of stepped in and said, hey, we'll sit with dinner at, my wife and I and a couple of friends. One of my friends actually mentioned in the book, he's one of my guys at church. Drummer has been in my life 15 years, about 12, 15 years. And I just remember him calling me up when I was at a particular low point. And we can talk about, emotional health, mental health. Look, this dude was calling me and say, hey, Alan, how are you doing? He would not let me off the hook. I'd give him some platitude. He's like, nah, he's not receiving it. A couple of other guys, same thing. These are rock solid guys who are not necessarily entrepreneurs, but they're brothers. And they really knew when I was not getting it together. So that, I think, this particular level where I now feel like I'm moving forward in my business would not have happened had I not kind of given myself up and said, hey, guys, I need help, right? So I think that's the key thing about adversity, is that you got to get people around you. I got people around me, thank God I let them in, that then said, hey, if you get this together, then you'll feel confident enough to step forward into the things that God's giving you. But as long as I was struggling to kind of believe in myself, there's no chance for my business. It would have been a house built on sand, right? Like the proverb says. So I really feel like that was the key thing that got me through that adversity, was when things were going wrong in my life, I got people around me to make sure that I shored that up, and then I could step forward with my business.
Powerful, man. Powerful. I love the fact that you talked about, again, I can't embrace my prosperity if I don't embrace my problems. I think that was a huge bar, because it's true. Sometimes, what we see as entrepreneurs or solopreneurs is we have a tendency, funny enough, or instinct, when things aren't going good in life, we almost dive ourselves into maybe what we're building, what the thought process that this I can control. I can fix this. You know what I mean? I don't have the capacity to deal with the relationships, or maybe I can't fix the relationship, but I can get better at my craft. I can get better at my business. I I can solve something. We have that desire to want to solve something.
Yeah, fix it. Yeah.
Right. But what it ends up being, I think to your point, is it's almost like we get so into ourselves or into trying to find anything to fix that our view is so myopic that we can't even look at the bigger picture and find out, bro, you're not making any progress. You're on a treadmill right now. Like you got your head down, your head is down and you're just like grinding that out running. But like if you look up, you realize you're on a treadmill. You're not making any progress. It's just activity. It's action. It's movement. You're spinning. And where we really need to spend time is to get the other aspects of our lives together so that we have the capacity to deliver and make progress, like you said, in what we're building from a business perspective. And I think that's even more so the case when you start talking about as a creative, because I remember there was a point in my life, again, I've been around music, enjoying music, writing, creating since I was 16. But there was a period of time where my home life wasn't on point. It wasn't where it needed to be. I didn't have a partner that was supportive or I felt was supportive of my passions and my skill set and my talent. And literally, I hit probably a 6 year hiatus of like writer's block, like creative block. I couldn't create. No matter, like, I was trying to write, I was trying to do stuff, but because my home life wasn't on point, because like I didn't have the environment that was conducive to me creating, I didn't have the inspiration because I needed that type of support and that stuff done properly. I couldn't create. I couldn't create anything that I felt proud of. I couldn't create anything that was meaningful. And it wasn't, I promise you, it's funny you're saying that, man, because like I'm coming to these realizations that I'm talking to you, is I didn't find that inspiration until I was inspired by the growth I was making emotionally and mentally. Ooh. Like when I became inspired by the growth I was making emotionally and mentally, and I reached that point where I'm going to take control of my life and I'm going to do things, like live things on my terms. And, as long as I'm right with myself and I'm right with God, then I know I'm doing the right thing. Like once I started doing that, once I started letting people in, bringing Jimmy into the fold and really opening up to him about what I was experiencing at the time and a couple of other friends, right? Once that happened, I was inspired by my own growth, and that unlocked the inspiration that I needed to be able to create creatively. And I did more in the next 3 years that I had creatively than I was able to accomplish in the past 10 years. Just kind of going through those motions, man. So everything you're saying, bro, and just your testimony is just really resonating with me. Like, it's powerful as hell, man. Thank you, seriously.
Oh no, it's my pleasure, man. And I really do. Again, as I say it, it's the same thing. It's that iron sharpening iron thing, right? It's like you talk about it. It's like, oh my gosh, that is what I went through. Oh my gosh, now that I hear it back to me, it's like, my goodness. I don't even realize how powerful it is or how much people fed or sold into me until you take a look back and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what did it. That was the key. And like you just said, I think the clarity for creatives, I think there's a lot of misplaced trauma worship. I don't know how to call that. I just made that up. But we make up like, okay, if I'm going through, if I'm like, I'm writing songs about heartbreak and
that's when I make my best stuff.
Yeah.
When I'm depressed.
It's like really, like, are we going to say yes? Now there's room for that, right? There's room for like expressing yourself. But what I've been really fighting against, guys, I don't want that to be the status quo. Like, yes, you're going to have dips. Yeah, we're going to have trouble. Yeah, we're going to be creators. We're going to have, like you said, writer's block and things like that. But that shouldn't be the status quo. That shouldn't be the place that you live, right? And so my biggest thing as a creative has been to tell people, hey, you can be healthy, you can be whole. Jimmy, you talked about like going in your workout, right? Like taking care of your health, not being one of these people that's like, smoking and drinking and like having all this stuff and then you try to be creative out of that, is it really necessary? Maybe not. Maybe your best work is when you're fresh and when you're happy and when your wife is or your kids or whatever, like whatever your situation is, it's like then you can go back and be like, ooh, remember that time when I was sad? Let me write about that. Let me talk about when I was, and like, yeah, you can talk about the bad stuff, but not living in the thing that you're trying to create. Correct, so I think that's why I'm so passionate about that.
I love what you said. The example that you just provided is spot on. because what I often found is when I was writing things, because once I got to a place where I was healthy, emotionally, mentally, then I was able to honestly process what I had experienced, and then that started to appear in my writing and what I was creating. But when people would listen, they would think, "Oh man, like when you wrote this, like you were so depressed when you wrote that." No, I wasn't. And I wasn't. I promise you, I was in a great space. What you're hearing is me being in a healthy enough space where I can honestly process it and then bring it to you. But I don't want you to walk away with the impression that I'm just walking around despondent about my prior relationship. I had already done the work to get through that. So to your point, there's this weird, for lack of a better term, like trauma worship as when it comes to creatives, where you think that only the best inspiration comes from living in this depressed state. It's the furthest thing from the truth. It's when you are mentally healthy, when you're emotionally healthy, when you have everything going on all cylinders around you, you're healthy enough to be able to process what you've been through and articulate it and highlight the lessons, the learnings, the growth, and share that with the world. Because the version of me that was cut off and closed and depressed and not healthy and all of that stuff before I let other folks in, I didn't even have the tools to properly articulate what I was experiencing and share that with folks. So I think you definitely touched on something there, Alan.
Now, there's a few things that both of y'all touched on it, and what you just said as well, Devon, is I think sometimes a creative might use that as an excuse to say, well, because they're secluded and they don't have people around them, or they're not letting people in, well, this is all I have to be able to release or to work through these emotions and these negative things that I'm going through. But what you mentioned, both of you, again, is seeking help, but humbling yourself. And I was reading this morning just about the meekness of God, right? And how we're called to live in that spirit of peace and meekness. And part of that is recognizing I need to have myself, especially as men, surrounded by other men that I know are going to hold me accountable. They're going to ask me tough questions, that are going to be there for me when I'm going through these troubles, these trying times, and I'm faced with this adversity in my life, because I don't have to do it alone. And whether they're providing guidance, like you said earlier, Alan, whether they're just providing encouragement to you, or it's that person in your life that says, no, how are you really doing? Like, don't just give me that, the sugarcoating stuff, like really talk to me and let me know. Those things are just so important. And for entrepreneurs, I think sometimes we can get caught up thinking that like nobody knows how we're feeling, or this entrepreneur, solopreneur life, and I'm out here by myself, when that doesn't have to be the case. There's community in meeting and surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and people who maybe they're in a different industry or different space, but we're all here trying to follow our purpose and make an impact in other people's lives and serve other people. And there's connection in that. And when you're able to build relationships and then sharing some of those things, and again, it really have that inner circle, which we talked a lot about in our season 2. That inner circle is what's going to help you to get through. And I appreciate you reminding us of that verse as well, that, a brother's there for that time of adversity. Because that has been so true in my life as well, between Devon and myself and a couple of other brothers that are just, very, very dear to me. So, so thankful, man, for those reminders, and you just sharing, from your heart and your experiences. I am curious when we talk about, this life as an entrepreneur, and, we talk about your, kind of the origin story, right? And how we all got started and what led us up to this point. What is one secret that you would offer to your pre-entrepreneurial self that would help you maybe accelerate your progress to where you are now, if you can go back and do something like that?
Wow, I love that you asked this question, because this is one of my favorite questions to my guest, and now I have to turn around and answer it. Right? I would definitely, I've said this many times. Again, you can tell I'm an open book, right? I've learned that, just the more open I am, transparent I am, the better I am. So I wish my pre-entrepreneur self, I wish I had told myself to prepare for success, not be surprised by it. Like, I never really bought into the idea that, and they did this thing about self-care, self-love, all that stuff. Like, I don't want to go into like the buzzwords, but yeah, I really wish I believed in myself a little more. I really wish that starting out, not that I would have, like, again, not stay humble, not be humble in terms of like a bad way, but I've heard humility is described as being no more or no less than who you are. And that's a key word that, like, I would always be like, oh, I'm not quite there. And like, yeah, you're not quite there. But I knew that. God knows that, but I'm also, fearfully and wonderfully made and all those other things. So if I had bought into that, once again, it kind of goes right back to that whole mindset thing, right? So much of this stuff is not nuts and bolts and X's and O's. It's mindset. So I wish at that point, before I got into, hey, I'm going to be my own boss, or I'm going to build this brand, I'm going to build this thing, I'm going to do that thing, I wish I just kind of told myself, say, hey, this is probably going to work, and if it works, you need to be ready for when it works. I had a coaching client just the other day, and I laid that on her, and I'll give you the example I gave her, which is a knock on me. I've had one of my my live stream shows during the pandemic. I started up a live stream series, sold tickets, did the whole thing, created a live stream experience for my living room for the pandemic. And I had a fan who basically came to me and said, hey, I would love to sponsor a concert. She just wanted to sponsor the entire thing. Now, do you know that my full self didn't have the payment systems ready, or I don't know what I did. I erased her information or something, and I still don't have, she was ready. She came in ready to bankroll, and I wasn't, because I wasn't expecting success. I wasn't thinking ahead, like, hey, what if this is the day that somebody comes in with the big check? What if this is the day? So that's the thing I would have told myself, honestly, from the get-go, is like, hey, stop assuming things will go wrong. Yes, prepare for the worst or whatever. That's all okay. Be prepared. That's cool. But also prepare for the best, because if the best comes and you're not ready, it's literally as if the best never showed up. And so that's one thing I wish I had thought more of before I started.
Yeah, a few bars.
Yeah.
You've heard our podcast before, so we have our golden nuggets that drop, and you've definitely some strong bars and golden nuggets. So once the audience is hearing us, believe me, they're going to hear those golden nuggets dropping throughout. Yeah. So speaking of our audience, any kind of last words of advice that you would share for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs today about building their business?
Wow, I would so much that we could share. I mean, this conversation, number one, gentlemen, has been incredible. I'm inspired. Like, I'm ready to go run through a wall right now just from this conversation. I think I would go back to the community thing, though, because I think a lot of what we discussed has come around to, who's around you, who's in your corner, and entrepreneurship and solopreneurship. Clearly, we're talking about solo. It sounds like it's all about being alone, being your own boss, and there's nothing further from the truth when it comes to actual success. My success is my tribe's success, is my community's success. When I see guys that again, like we just shared a tidbit here or there, or in terms of, hey, try this with your Facebook, or, hey, make sure you get this guy to pay you, or watch out for this guy, he's not going to pay you, like those little moments where you like you said, Devon, where you actually like break down and say, hey, just tell me how you really do your business, right? Dropping those guards and just really connecting with people, that would probably be my number one piece of advice, because so many times we do sit in YouTube University, School of Hard Knocks, and we try to figure it out on our own. And I feel like the number one thing, again, is that community. The Bible says, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Like, there's safety in getting more people. You guys already mentioned, I'm sure, in several podcasts before, your whole initiative seems to be, again, like that's why we connect so well, is because it's all about community and connected with people that are like-minded. Same with God and Gigs. Like, I just really feel like my job is to bring people together. I don't have all the answers, but he does, or she does. And it's like, if we all get in the same room, somebody's going to have the right answer. So that would probably be my number one thing. It's like, don't be afraid to share, open up to people, and obviously pray about it. Let God lead you to the right people. Don't share your dream with everybody. Don't be Joseph and end up in a pit. Don't share your dream with everybody. But whenever God leads you to the right people, like, that's when it's time to, hey, let me open up, because again, like that whole rising tide lifts all boats. If you're in the right pool, then all the boats should be lifting at the same time. And I just feel like we got to like be open to that.
Love that, love that, love that. So I saw a clip of you on Instagram playing the piano and doing a gig. So I would love for you to share with our audience and our uncompromising entrepreneurs, where can they find more information about you, about the podcast, and if they're in the South Florida area, maybe even, you know, some gigs that you have coming up in the future.
Oh, well, thanks, man. I love that. That was actually, I think if you saw the one that I just did, it was the 21st of September, and I played as like I had to play it, and it was it was so deep. It was like I didn't even realize this when I played. It was 9/21/21. I'm like, whoa, like that's never gonna happen again in my lifetime. I'm like, thank God I caught that moment. But thank you so much for this opportunity. Everything in terms of God and Gigs, which is my platform once again to help better creatives build better lives from the inside out. GodandGigs.com for everything. You can find the Instagram, the Facebook, all of those things are under God and Gigs as a username, so it's easy to find. In terms of my personal stuff, I do have a website, alancpaul.com, which will lead you everywhere else. As you said, like I have many paths, and sometimes I'm a master, jack of all trades, master of some, and so I am definitely still writing, still creating, still got to create a new quote book. I want to do a little more stuff with my writing, so I might be doing a non-musical book very soon. So you can find out about that at alancpaul.com. Sign up for that. And yeah, there's also the music site that you can find from that same website. It'll take you to my Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff. So they can find anything I'm involved with from that standpoint.
Awesome. Well, again, we feel, I'm sure, I'm speaking for the both of us, but I know my brother really, really well. Feel the same way, just about the inspiration and just kind of being fired up about this conversation and so many thoughts that we've had and things that were triggered in our minds. So I hope that our uncompromising entrepreneurs out there, as you're listening or you're watching this, that you had that same feeling as well. We thank you so much again, Alan, for joining us and for dropping so many golden nuggets for our audience out there. To our uncompromising entrepreneurs, again, please share this episode with other entrepreneurs that you know are going to find benefit from this episode itself. If you want to get in contact with us, again, you can do that through uncompromisingcoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. Always, again, leave comments within this episode. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Uncompromising Entrepreneur Podcast, and leave some comments. Again, we love engaging. We love hearing from you guys, whether it's through those mediums or even if you're DMing us on any of those social media platforms. Again, we truly, truly, truly appreciate hearing from you as well. Be on the lookout for the next episode, which is going to be episode 62. We're continuing on this journey at least through the month of October around solopreneurship. So the next episode is going to be really top 3 secrets. We dropped a lot of golden nuggets here, but we got 3 more secrets that we're going to provide to you to help you find solopreneur success. So again, be on the lookout for that. You're not going to want to miss that one. Sure that you're going to find a lot of good information from that. Couple of things that I took away from this conversation, Alan. 1, share, smile, serve. Make sure that you are focusing on kind of those 3 pillars, and then prepare yourself for success, especially if you know that you're following your purpose, you're living in that, you're taking those bold steps, and you're walking in obedience. Be prepared. Be prepared for all that God has for you, because you just never know when it's around the corner. And if somebody want to give you some money, you want to be ready to accept that.
Exactly.
For sure. So again, hopefully that, if there's any other golden nuggets that really stood out to you, again, we'd love to hear that from you. Go ahead and leave that for us in the comments. So thank you again. Can't thank you enough, because again, this was a really, really, really good, profound conversation that we had, Alan. So we appreciate you saying yes and joining us for our 3rd installment of the MBA series. To our audience out there, as always, y'all, take care. God bless
and stay encouraged.
You have just listened to the Uncompromising Entrepreneur Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you pursue your passion, create profits, and build a legacy. Until next time, y'all.